And we're back in the never-ending saga of uncovering what is the actual scope of the crimes that Jeffrey Epstein committed. And so now we're looking at the mansion in New Mexico, and we're looking at what President Bill Clinton and his wife, Hillary Clinton, had to say about all of this. Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and I am here with Kelly Hyman, and we're going to break these issues down for you. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Legal AF for all things at the intersection of law and politics. So, multiple things blowing up at the same time. There's been increased scrutiny around a mansion a huge sprawling piece of property that Jeffrey Epstein owned in the state of New Mexico. Now, apparently in 2019, there were some investigation in terms of what was happening there. Were girls being trafficked there? There's a rumor that the bodies of two girls are buried on that property. And so that is all percolating on one side, which is very interesting, especially in terms of how far the investigation got in 2019 before it was effectively shut down. However, New Mexico legislators have passed, they've put together a truth commission, a task force to investigate what's going on there. But simultaneously, the Clintons were testifying about what they knew about Epstein, where, when, how, and how close they were. And basically, they're like, we're that close. We were acquaintances, but we're not cool like that. So, Kelly, thoughts? So much to unpack here. Tell me what your initial gut reaction is in seeing the testimony, or at least the clips of the testimony that's been circulating, as well as how this all impacts what's unfolding in the state of New Mexico.
It reaffirms to me that there should be a public hearing. And here's why. During Miss Clinton's deposition, there is a House rule in which that no photos should be made public. There was a big to-do. Miss Clinton wanted a public hearing for the American people to hear what's going on. It was behind closed doors. And so what that means is initially the public didn't get to see it in real time. However, a photo was taken, which was posted online, which reaffirms her whole position that this should be made out to the public. And she also reaffirmed, and she has said multiple times, that she doesn't recall meeting Epstein, that she's never been on his plane, that she's never been to his island, she's never been to his place in New Mexico, and that has been her position the whole time. And the fact that she had to sit for over 6 hours, and then not only was she asked questions about that, but then also it's been reported that she was asked questions about Pizzagate.
Which has nothing to do with Epstein whatsoever. To me, pure political theater. But continue.
That's her whole position. Exactly. The whole point of it was political theatering. And also not only that, but about UFOs. I don't see how anything has to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, the whole idea is about accountability. As someone who represents victims of sex trafficking and human trafficking, there needs to be accountability. There needs to find the people accountable that have caused these survivors, these victims, harm. And this is what this investigation is supposedly about. Then it should be out in the public. A majority of the public feel that this should be out there for the public to hear, no matter if you're Republican, Democrat, or independent. And people want accountability. People want justice. And why not have a public hearing in real time, bring everyone in that's involved, and so we can listen and ultimately make up our own decision of what we think happened.
Exactly. To me, that again, it comes back to the bedrock of the Constitution, as well as the bedrock of our democracy of, basically where trials are, first of all, trials are held, right? Let's start with that, right? Like people are charged, people are arrested, people are charged, and a trial actually happens to have some kind of accountability. We saw that with Ghislaine Maxwell, but why is she the only one twisted in the wind? As well she should be, but she shouldn't be alone because there were so many people that enabled this, that turned a blind eye, that actively aided and abetted, and more importantly, benefited because they were vile people, attacking children, right? So there's that. But the fact that we can't just have one bipartisan commission just bring everybody, including the current sitting president, including his wife, the first lady, including all these people who got listed, bring them in and let them say before, raise your hand, take the oath under the penalty of perjury and tell the truth and be like, listen, yeah, I was at his mansion, but I didn't see anything. I was at the island. I didn't do anything. I take the fifth. All right, fine. But at least we're seeing an investigation in real time, and we're seeing that Congress is actually doing their duty and taking it seriously. We have yet to see that, which to me is utterly disgusting because I too, as a prosecutor, was really deep into gender-based violence work, prosecuting these types of cases. I too work with victims, especially those who survived childhood sexual assault. And it just pisses me off the fact that all of this information is out there. I mean, especially when we talk about what's going on in New Mexico. The Attorney General of New Mexico launched an investigation in 2019 because, again, there were all these flights in and out. People were, New Mexico, people like to keep themselves to themselves, right? It's rural area. Everybody is over there with a 40-acre ranch for a reason. They don't want to talk to people, and that's cool, right? But they're over there looking at this property, of course, before Epstein passed away, and they saw, or was murdered, who knows? But they were seeing crazy amounts of flight traffic because there was a private runway on the property. There were all these, comings and goings. So people are like, this isn't normal for this area of the world, right? And so they had concerns. And the Attorney General launched an investigation, but the feds came in and said, you know what? We should be the ones to run point on it because we have more resources. So give me everything you have, which the Attorney General complied and did that. And then never heard anything again. So what happened with that investigation? So the feds got all this information about potential wrongdoing that occurred in the state of New Mexico. They have the resources of the federal government to be able to investigate, follow up, or at the bare minimum, have professional courtesy, circle back to the AG of New Mexico and be like, well, there's not enough, or the witnesses weren't credible, or whatever the case may be. Say something. But now, thankfully, New Mexico is taking it seriously. They're like, you know what? We're not even going to wait for the feds. We're going to handle this on our own because, again, it's a blemish on their state and their reputation that this kind of foolishness was able to go on. And heaven forbid, there may be two bodies there. There may be two families who have no clue where their loved ones are. So, yeah, sorry, Kelly. Am I off base here, or am I reaching for the stars here?
You are not off base, and silence by no response is a response. So to your point, the fact that they received no response is in fact a response. And it is nice to hear that it is going to be looked at more deeply in regards to the property in New Mexico. And if there are bodies that are there that allegedly have been reported to be there, that there can be some kind of accountability, some kind of justice looking into that. It's interesting that they asked former President Clinton during his deposition about, being on that property as well. But also to your point, now we have, as some has called it, the Clinton rule. And so what that means is the fact that a president can be subpoenaed by the Oversight Committee and testify. And so, to your point, is Trump going to testify now, or is it going to take another 2 years when he's no longer the president of the United States? Is it still going to be investigated? Are people still going to be, concerned about this issue? I hope so, because I always go back to the survivors and what they have gone through, and hopefully that there'll be some type of justice for them. But it's interesting about the demeanor. It's been reported about the demeanor of Mr. Clinton and Miss Clinton, or former President Clinton, that he was very, very, very calm in the deposition. It's been reported that they even asked him about Trump coming to testify, and that his response was something along the lines of, ultimately that's up to the committee to decide. And it has been reported that he was kind of shaking during the deposition. And then from Miss Clinton's standpoint was feisty, just to see some of the outtakes of the deposition. But I mean, understandably, they're asking her stuff, as we pointed out, that has nothing to do with it. Plus, she has said multiple times, I don't recall meeting this person, Epstein. I was never, on his island. I was never on his plane. Like, there's nothing here, multiple times. And the fact that they brought her in and she had to sit for so many hours proves her point. And to your point, that the whole idea of this is political theater, and this is supposed to be bipartisan, and this is not supposed to be some politically motivated. It's ultimately for justice, and justice for the survivors.
Agreed. And one other interesting point was that President Clinton was asked, basically about some interactions that he had with the current president in terms of Epstein. And the current president made a comment like, yeah, we fell out over a real estate deal, which is contrary to what he said in the past, that, oh, he stole a woman from me in Palm Beach and I had to boot him out of Mar-a-Lago, and that's why we fell apart. So again, a little bit of shifting narratives there. And it doesn't bring us closer to the truth. And lastly, addressing the Clinton rule. Okay, if you want to make the argument, we don't want to bring in a sitting president, that's a bad look. Okay, fine. What about the first lady? Because she doesn't get the same protections. And there are plenty of pictures circulating that shows she was like this with Epstein. So who better to be able to talk about what the ins and outs were, how girls got recruited, because she in all likelihood got recruited by him at some point. And again, because
allegedly, we don't know that for sure.
All I know is that those pictures are out there of her allegedly around 19 or 20 on Epstein's plane. There are pictures of her quite young, and I'm not saying she's underage in those photos. She looks like, to me, 18, 19 years old. But she was in pictures with Epstein and other high-profile folks. So she clearly, the evidence is there. This is not AI. The evidence is there that she had dealings with these people. The level of which, we don't know. All we know is that she ended up marrying the current president when he was not the president. So that's why I'm not saying alleged about that, because clearly the proof is in the pudding. The two of them have had interactions. The question is, what is the nature of that? And she should be made to answer for it, especially as we're trying to get justice for the survivors. And that's not to say she did anything wrong. She, in my opinion, was likely a victim too. But again, we don't know the full story, but we need to know the full story for the purposes of justice and closure for these brave victims. So before we wrap, I just want to say, I know we've been talking a lot about sexual assault, sexual abuse. If you or somebody you know has survived this, again, just know there's folks out here who will believe you. There are resources available. We're going to drop a tile for the organization RAIN, which is an amazing national organization that works with survivors of sexual assault. So please get yourself the help and support you need, because I know this news cycle can be like hella triggering. So be sure to take care of yourself. Kelly, any last words?
get out there and vote. We have an upcoming election. So please make sure you're registered and let your voice be heard at the ballot box.
Louder for the people in the back. I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the resident legal diva. This is Kelly Hyman. Thank you again for tuning in. Stay safe, stay informed, and keep demanding justice. Take care.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.